Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are looking at linear equations part 2. So let's just put that up there. We're dealing with part 2 now. Okay, so one of the things we have been looking at is whether something is a solution, how to graph this. So let's look at one where we're doing x plus y equals -2. So if I need to create a table of values and then insert an actual graph, one of the first things I'm going to have to do is to convert this. I need it in slope-intercept form, also known as function form, y equals mx plus b. So in order to do this, I'm going to subtract x from both sides, and then we get y equals -x plus -2. So now I have to create my table of values. So I have my x and y, and oh, sorry about that. We're going to do -1, 0, and 1. So let's see what happens when I put in -1 for x. So be very careful. We're going to leave the negative there because that's not what we're replacing. We're replacing just the x, and we happen to be replacing it with a negative number, which is why it can look slightly confusing. Completely understand that. So once we replace that, then we have -1. So what's a negative times a negative? That's a positive. So we have 1 plus -2, and that's going to give us -1. So this coordinate point is -1, -1. Okay. Now, if we put in 0, so again, we leave that negative, we're not going to touch it. So we have 0 plus -2, and then anything times 0 is 0, so I don't have to worry about that. Plus a -2 is going to give me -2. So I'm just going to take this coordinate point right here, which is my x value, and my output is going to be a -2. We're going to do the same thing for 1. So it's a negative on the outside. I'm only replacing the x, so it's a 1 plus -2. Negative times a positive is a negative, so -1 plus -2 equals -3. So then I have 1 and -3. Now, part of this, it says create a table in order to graph. So we also have to put in a table. I'm sorry, we also have to put in a graph. So let me just drag that in. I have to shrink this down a little bit. So let's see. How do I make this smaller? Oh, here it is. Knew there was a way, just so that we can see our numbers at the same time. So if I'm doing that, and I'm looking at -1, -1. So I go over to -1 on the x-axis, I go down to -1 on our y, put a dot. Then I have 0, -2, so 1, 2, and then I have 1, 1, 2, 3, 1 and -3. So when I do this, whoops, sorry, let me see if I can erase that. Remember, I never said anything about drawing. So let's see if we can draw this in. And we have to have the arrows. Remember, without the arrows is just a line segment. It is not an actual line. The lines need the arrows because it goes on and on forever. So don't forget about that. Now, sometimes though, so let's also talk about vertical and horizontal lines while we're doing this. Vertical lines go straight up and down, and they usually intersect at a point. So if I have this right here as one of my lines, first of all, I want to say this is my x-axis, and this is my y-axis. Okay. Now, what is it intersecting? So let's look right here. It intersects our y-axis. So this line is going to be a y equals, and where is it intersecting? If this is 0, this is 1, 2. So our equation is going to be y equals 2 because it's intersecting the y-axis at 2. Now let's try one. Let's see, can we change this color? Yes, we can. Let's try this one right here. So the first thing I want to ask, what is it intersecting? Good, it intersects the x-axis. And where is it intersecting? So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's intersecting at -5. Okay, so these are different ways you can tell which way it's going, and we can also tell, so are we looking at an equation that's an x equals or a y equals? So I know some people had some questions about how to graph these. So this is the kind of fun part. I like these. So if we're doing this, and we have y equals 7, and I make a table. So let's say I'm making my table and I have -1, 0, and 1. We're using this equation right here. It's telling me that y equals 7. Doesn't say anything about x. So I know in my head that if I put in -1, there's nothing that's going to affect it. What is my y going to be? It's going to be 7. What happens when I put in 0? It's going to be 7. What happens when I put in 1? It's going to be 7. What happens when I put in 10 is going to be 7. So if I were to graph this, I'm just going to do kind of a rough one for you guys. This means that if I am at -1, it's going to be 7. If I'm at 0, it's going to be 7. If I'm at 1, it's going to be 7. If I'm at 10, it's going to be 7. It doesn't matter, but it is going to go through the y-axis. Hopefully. Nope. Sorry guys. It is going to go through the y-axis, and it is going to go through at y equals 7. Same thing will happen if we're using the x-axis. Okay? Please refer back to your notes to know whether they're vertical or horizontal lines to help you. If you have questions, please use Remind as I don't check my email. Okay, thanks guys. See you tomorrow.